Welcome back to Detailed, an original podcast by RCAT. This is a show where we uncover lessons learned to help you navigate your next project. I'm Cherise Lakeside, Senior Spec Writer at RDH Building Science, and your host. My guests today are Hannah Hackathorn and Benjamin Ayers, both co-directors and principals at Mancini Duffy in their Phoenix office. Mancini Duffy has offices in New York City, New Jersey, Washington, Arizona, and Florida. Hannah Hackathorn is the award-winning co-director and principal of Mancini's Phoenix studio, where she's leading a new era of workplace design that challenges the status quo and reimagines how spaces are delivered. With over 20 years of experience and a portfolio that includes TikTok, L'Oreal, JustWorks, and Roche, Hannah is a passionate advocate for design build and a driving force behind smarter, faster, and more integrated project delivery. Speaking to my heart, her mission goes beyond form and function. She focuses on creating spaces that genuinely impact people, support culture, and elevate how we work and connect. Her work has earned top industry honors and has been featured in publications like Work Design Magazine and Design Well. Benjamin Ayers, AIA, NCARB, is an award-winning architect with more than 22 years of experience leading civic, cultural, workplace, healthcare, and education projects. His work has received over 30 design awards, including 3 national AIA design awards. Known for his process-driven design approach, he excels at integrating innovation, sustainability, and client vision to deliver transformative projects that enrich communities. A leader in both practice and community, he currently serves as chair of the City of Mesa's Planning and Zoning Advisory Board and has held multiple leadership roles with the American Institute of Architects. Beyond practice, he has taught design studios at Arizona State University and participated as a juror and lecturer nationally, shaping the next generation of architects. He is committed to building lasting partnerships, advancing design excellence, and contributing to the growth of vibrant, resilient communities. The project we are talking about today is the Hualapai Tribal Program in Arizona. The Hualapai Tribal Program is a comprehensive design and construction initiative that redefines civic, cultural, and community infrastructure for the Hualapai Tribe in northwestern Arizona. Encompassing 34 distinct projects and utilizing PMB, or pre-engineered metal buildings, the program is conceived not only as a delivery of essential facilities, but as a coordinated architectural statement, one that integrates cultural resonance, contemporary function, and environmental responsiveness. Now, let's get into the details. Welcome back to Detailed. My guest today, honored to have this firm back for the 4th time on the show, but new guests today are Hannah Hackathorn and Benjamin Ayers, both co-directors and principals at Mancini Duffy in their Phoenix office, which was news to me. By the way, I did not know they had a Phoenix office. Mancini Duffy also has offices in New York City, New Jersey, Washington, Arizona, obviously, and Florida. The project we're going to be talking about today, and I had to look this up phonetically. I'm going to try not to blow this. The Hualapai.
Yep.
Hualapai.
Hualapai.
Oh, Hualapai.
I am so proud. The Hualapai Tribal Program in Arizona. Hannah and Ben, welcome to Detailed. How are you today?
Good. Thank you, Cherise, for having us. Very excited to be here. I can't believe we're the 4th guest back from Mancini, so there's a lot of pressure on our shoulder to make sure we do the right thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know how it is at your office, but I know that we can get a little competitive in our office sometimes.
Yeah, totally.
So just blow them all out of the water.
Absolutely.
That's the plan.
I think that's fine. Well, we always start the podcast with an icebreaker question. And you guys are lucky because I didn't get too goofy with yours today. But just to get us warmed up and maybe learn a little something about you. So my question for the two of you today is, I would like to know, what is the most impactful piece of advice that you have ever received about design?
Do you want to go first, Ben?
Sure. Really, that's a good question. I think for myself, I had a great mentor when I just came out of school for the first several years of my career. And he told me this, but he also showed me, more importantly, that you just need to let go of your ego. And I think the attitude that he had that showed me that every single day was one of the most impactful things in my entire career, because, I was around other architects that kind of had a different way of approaching things. And his attitude of this optimistic and just kind of just recognizing that ideas come from anywhere, let's say, and that way he approached things was something that was very impactful for me early on in my career. And it's really helped me throughout my whole career to approach everything that we do that way. So I think that's probably the most impactful thing.
That's pretty good life advice, to be perfectly
100%.
honest. How about you, Hannah?
This is something I've been, advice was given to me in the early stage as well. And I think I live by pretty much daily, which is design is creative problem solving. If you don't know the why, what you're actually coming up with, what you're problem solving, then it means nothing. It could be a absolutely beautiful space, but it is a completely meaningless design. So that is, I think, something that I live by. I try to share that information and share that advice to our team that we have here as well.
Well, I think that's, I've spent, while I'm in a building science firm now, I spent most of my career in architecture, and I have seen along the way architects kind of get lost in their own vision,
Absolutely.
and forget that really your job is to serve your client
100%.
and their vision. I mean, not to say that you might not need to guide them a little bit if their vision is totally insane, but that's keeping grounded.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, it's giving them and the building users what they need in the best way that you possibly can.
Yes.
Instead of your version of the Taj Mahal in
Absolutely.
your head.
Absolutely.
And then everybody's happy. Let's talk about this project. I'm excited about this. Let's see how many times I can say this name right.
You'll get it. You'll be professional by the end.
Right.
I can't even tell you how many times I practiced it before you guys came on this call. So first, tell me about the Hualapai Tribal Program and what they're looking to achieve. I did a little trolling on the internet to get information beyond what you sent me. And it looks like this is the whole of this. Their effort is a massive project.
Yes, very much so.
So tell me what they're looking to achieve.
Sure. Yeah, I'll jump on this.
Overall.
Yeah, it's a really interesting program. So I would say this really started with someone reaching out to us. Specifically, I was the one that had the initial phone call. And really, this is kind of a brainchild of a couple folks that are going around the country working with different tribes. Tribal work can be challenging for a number of reasons. And what they have started to do, and it really started with prototyping this model of delivery, which really at the end of the day, it's nothing earth-shatteringly new or, no one's ever thought of, but the approach and kind of the combination of the way they approached it was different. And so they work with tribes across the country and they put an entire development team together. And so this kind of came from Kenneth Atkins at Atkins Engineering was the one that first approached us. And he's kind of acting in this project for us as a client rep. He works directly and really interfaces with the tribe. But he's done this around the country where they go in and they help them to deliver work on tribe, on different tribal reservations around the country. And so, yes, as you're saying, this is a large scale. And when you look at it, the team, I remember when we were first interviewed, there was something like 10 or 12 different companies represented at the interview. So it was significant. And really what it does is it looks at it from early stages, even as much as early as, grant writing to get funding is that early all the way through delivering projects. And so at the grand total, when we actually pursued this within a procurement procedure, there were 34 projects on the original RFP. So there's, and by the way, that's a mix of horizontal and vertical. So there's significant infrastructure improvements, roads, pipelines, and then you have a handful of architectural projects, actual vertical projects. And so we were brought in as one of the team members to handle the design of anything that's vertical, practically. So yeah, at the end of the day, it was something they're trying to deliver. And the big goal of this, by the way, is there's kind of several variables to this, but one, as I said, tribal work is difficult. So they have a hard time delivering, right? So getting better quality designers, better quality builders to go out to some of these remote locations was a challenge. And so if you were to combine a whole development team, you can attract better designers, better builders to come out by scale. You've just improved the scale, number one. You can also make things more efficient and deliver projects much quicker, whereas, it takes much longer maybe to do that by themselves. And then more importantly, I think one of the most significant parts of this is the training program, which is teaching the actual members of the reservation how to do this themselves. So those all are incorporated into as part of this delivery methodology, really, at the end of the day.
I thought I read there were like 50 plus projects. Am I confusing this? Like, did it grow once you did the RFP?
It's grown a little bit, and I think so. There's a certain the funding that's there. The original RFP had 34, and it's grown slightly, but the original kind of contract involved, there's a finite amount of money that's a part of that, and it's a significant amount, as you probably said, because of the number of projects, but they can't really add to that. However, as Mancini, as we worked with them as well, we've actually been approached by the tribe to do some projects that are outside of the suite. So from a contractual relationship, we're direct to the tribe versus for example, we are not the prime on this suite of projects. The consor, which is the company that is the prime on this, is actually who we're technically working for, and they are contracted to the tribe. So that's how maybe it grew, but the original 34 is pretty set from the beginning, just because that was what we had from the original scope.
Did you want to add anything to that, Hannah?
No, I think Ben pretty much covered it. I mean, it's been very unique opportunity for us to engage in this early process. We always kind of dream of this level of collaboration from as early onset as possible. And having that much of trust and having all the players at the table and coming up with a common goal and how we're going to come up with a solution for our client, it's just been such a fruitful experience. And, I don't know in my career whether I've experienced anything in this capacity.
Well, and we'll have some questions coming up about this, but I've actually also done a few tribal projects in my career, and I can see how that model could be very beneficial.
Yes.
Because it is a completely different animal.
Yeah.
So I read that the Hualapai, I'm going to say it as many times as I can.
I love it.
I read that the Hualapai Tribe is a federally recognized sovereign nation and has approximately 1 million acres along 108 miles of the Grand Canyon and Colorado River. I can only imagine the views. Occupying part of 3 northern Arizona counties.
Yes.
We're talking about the admin building today. So exactly where is this project? Because I mean, it looks like they've got most of the state of Arizona.
Actually, what's funny when you look at a map, Cherise, it's actually really not that big when you look at the state of Arizona. It's actually quite surprising. It's the scale of everything kind of throws you off. But so it's in northwestern Arizona. And for people that might not know, I would imagine not a lot of people have heard of the Hualapai Tribe, first off. But if you've seen at the Grand Canyon, they have that amazing glass overlook bridge that hangs over the edge. That's on Hualapai land. So that is called Grand Canyon West. And that's, obviously a significant income generator for them as a tribe. But that is literally on the reservation there. So The best way to describe it is the reservation looks kind of like a U, and the whole northern edge is the Colorado River. So they're right on the river, and it kind of comes down. And at the bottom, it kind of comes down to a little bit of a point. And we have the I-40, which is a major western highway in Arizona, and it connects Flagstaff to Kingman, which is really the last significant town before you hit Vegas, basically. And the I-40 was built there. But before that, there was Route 66. And Route 66 kind of does this weird thing where it's actually part of the I-40, and then it goes up north a little ways and kind of creates this rainbow shape. Well, at the top of that rainbow is Peach Springs, Arizona. And Peach Springs is let's say, the center of the Hualapai Reservation. It's the town that they have there. And not a lot of people know it, even in Arizona. Cherise, we bring it up all the time, and everyone's, Peach Springs, I've never heard of in my life. Or I get that it sounds like something that's in the movie Cars. And it actually looks like it in some ways too. But there's not much there. Well, there's one lodge, one restaurant. Cell service is actually a challenge, believe it or not. So it's right in the heart of Peach Springs. And so the suite really encompasses many sites in Peach Springs because we're working actively on 5 or 6 projects right now with the tribe. 4 or 5 of those actually are part of this project suite. So the administration building, which we're kind of talking about today, but we've also had under construction a new recreation park and a new facility for that. There is a veterans park and memorial that's also under construction. We're working on a new transportation complex that will help, with their future growth and vehicular kind of maintenance programs and things like that, as well as a senior center kind of renovation that we're working on currently. So this is all in Peach Springs. Now, some of the more significant things you're talking about, by the way, from the infrastructure, one of the most important ones, as an example, is where that overlook is, hanging over the edge of the canyon, is about a 3-hour, I think, Hannah, right, 3 or 3.5 hour drive from
3
Peach
hours.
Springs, because it's a very old, horrible road. And you can imagine being, in the reservation, and you're an employee that goes up there to work there, because they have a little airport right by it, by the way. That 3-hour drive has to happen before you go to work. So one of the more significant elements of this package is improving that road, which will take the drive to between an hour and a half. And the impact that would have on every single person that works there is incalculable.
That road is that bad that it's going to cut the
that's
drive
really
down?
bad.
Having been up there, there's just not much around it. And it is, you're seeing a lot of housing that's not in the best condition. What considered to be a park that's pretty much a dirt road. So, I think being part of this project and even able to create a rec center for the community where kids can come and play and be safe, it is such a meaningful project and experience. And to be part of creating something like this that impacts not only a person, it's a community. There's nothing like it.
Well, it sounds like that's a lot of, you guys are bored in your office, I can tell. I mean, that's a lot of different projects in a community. My stepson is married to a Native American young lady from Flagstaff, the Flagstaff area. And,
Wonderful.
So I don't pretend to be any kind of expert on anything really, but except specs. I might know something there, but I have a little bit of knowledge. I've actually made fry bread with her and heard a lot about, because she was brought up on the reservation.
Oh, wow.
And so I know that a lot of reservations are challenged.
Yes.
In keeping people on the reservation and having viable facilities and jobs and things like that. So this has to be, because she told me, her grandmother lives in a shack with no running water.
Yeah.
And so, getting facilities like this has to be a game changer for the community.
Extremely.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. It's been an adventure and one of the most rewarding projects I've ever worked on.
And humbling. Yeah.
So Peach
Springs. Peach
Springs. I
Springs.
kept out wanting to say Peach City. One of my nicknames is Peaches, so you'd think I
Okay.
could remember that. So if you're going from Peach Springs, how long of a drive is it to the nearest like
Town.
city with a Target and a Home Depot
Yeah.
or
45
Kingman, I
minutes.
guess.
Yeah, 45 minutes to
Kingman.
45
Kingman.
minutes?
And that's
Wow.
where a lot of people go stay there. You know, we've done that at times. The lodge that's there, it's great. Unfortunately, again, because of the condition of things, there's a railroad literally right behind the lodge. So when you check into the lodge, they have a big bin of ear plugs for you right when you're checking in. And it's a BNSF significant railroad. Every 30 minutes, Cherise, there's a train. And that is not a joke. And so one of the most significant projects as part of this whole suite, by the way, is putting a overpass, you know, like basically a big bridge over the top of that, which will do two things. One, right now there's no fence separating because it's crossed constantly because it's right in the middle of town, by the way. And so it'll allow them to put a fence. And if they have the fence there and they have the overpass, that will allow them to ease the restrictions on the railroad where they can go a little faster and they don't have to blare their horn. And that will have obviously a major impact on just being in Peach Springs and living there. And so that is a huge effort. We're not really working as the architect. We're not significantly involved with the overpass, but that was one of the first projects that kicked off as well, because you can imagine the amount of work that goes into putting in, and not only that, the funding that goes along with this, but great partners and even BNSF, for example, was hugely excited about this type of a project because imagine it allows them to move faster, right?
Yeah.
So it's good for them. So they've put money towards this. So it's a very large concerted effort to do this. So yeah, it's
So
a lot going
they're
on.
blaring that horn every 30 minutes.
Yes.
I would be in a rubber room.
It's pretty rough.
So we are, while we can talk about anything with the project, we're more specifically talking about the Tribal Administration Building project today, which is currently under construction. Give me a broad description of what this building includes.
Sure. So it's essentially 4 separate buildings that's joined by these 3 meaningful connectors. And I'll touch on why those are meaningful connectors. But ultimately, it starts from much more public-facing spaces such as the reception area, the council chamber, the job post where people can actually come and apply job if they don't have a computer. There's actually a place for them to utilize drug testing. And so there's a lot more of that. And then it starts to roll into much more private area like admin office functions. So that gives them sense of privacy and securities as well. And Ben will get into a little bit more specific as to why 4 separate buildings, because there's a lot of concept as well as the thought process behind as to why we came up with that. But all of those are essentially joined by, when I say that meaningful connector, which is a place of gathering, how to bring all the peoples together. We were deeply rooted and influenced by learning as much about the history of Hualapai Tribe and their heritage and the culture and all of that. And what it really all stems down to is their connection to people, the equal opportunities, the respect and love for each other. And Hualapai actually means a people of tall pine. So all of those connector, we really wanted to make sure that there are place of gathering, whether it's a public coming in together and gathering as a community, or even within the admin office function where they're coming in right now is all of their departments are in sort of separate housings. So you kind of have to meander through the different quarter to go find somebody. So it was really important for us to create a sense of community and sense of bringing people together. And we utilize those connecting points as such as we're trying to accommodate all of their programs.
You guys have been nice to me because I've been listening to you and you're both saying Hualapai. I just want you to know that I noticed that you were nice and you didn't correct me, but
No,
I still heard it.
it's all good.
So I did an interview not all that long ago on a hospital in Canada that was being built specifically to largely serve the Indigenous community in that area. And that community's beliefs and traditions played a huge role in both the planning and design for the project, including burning rooms. When they told me that, I'm like, what? Stop.
Yeah.
Hard stop. Tell me, what is a burning room? What did the planning process look like for this project?
Oh, yeah, good question.
Great
as well.
question.
I'll jump in. And I think,
Yeah, go ahead.
so first off, love that you're interviewing someone from Canada as a Canadian, but really this one started, and I've had the fortune as well. Cherise, sounds like you've worked on some tribal work in the past, and I've done quite a bit of tribal work. And really this one started just like any other of those where we got to dive in deep. And really this is one of my favorite things about my job. I love the research. This is something that gets me really excited and really love to do that. And so what we started to look at, we started doing our own research into the history, the culture, the traditions. We were able to meet with certain members of the tribe. Some of the elders were made available to us. We went and met with the cultural committee several times, and we had different people involved to be able to kind of just ask questions and learn. And every tribe is different. As you can imagine, they all have different traditions. They have different history. Their languages can be very different. Hualapai is a little bit interesting, and they're constructed of several bands, actually, is what they call them. And so those bands all had a little bit of a different way that they communicated, but eventually they all became what's referred to now as Hualapai. And their history is unique. They're actually quite a small tribe. They're not significant in size. And so the planning process for us started with that, right? Getting to know them a little bit, and we can talk more about design a little bit, but if you're thinking of what the actual planning, the process for us to getting through that, it was diving in deep to learn that as much as we could. But I'll add in here too, one of the things that made this very interesting and kind of, it really impacted the way that we move forward on the project is we had that interview, we won the project, we dove in, and one of the things that they had is they did have COVID money left as a tribe. And so this was a significant amount of money. And that had to be spent last year before December. And what that meant, by the way, that it needed to be GMP'd and under contract. So when we started looking at this project, we knew that we actually had to deliver in just a few months enough of a design, enough surety of what we were moving that it could be sent out and actually priced and then signed under contract to get GMP'd, or they were going to forfeit that money. So I don't want to say our process for the planning and kind of diving in and learning was shortened, because it wasn't. I mean, our intention, and one of the things, as Hannah was saying this earlier, by the way, we love this kind of integrated collaborative approach. We love having everyone at the table. And so this one just made that happen a little bit more concentrated, let's say. And we really got to dive in deep very, very quickly to learn these things. So that was part of that. And then specifically to planning, I don't know if you mean planning in the sense of for the building itself or actually the approvals process.
Just generally the process when you're, working, you're working with this group of people. So, especially with tribal work, sometimes you can have more than one layer. They have different government, so just how you, and especially now that you told me that you had this lovely, you didn't call it stressful, but it sounds like it was stressful to me, this process.
I was
process
trying
that
to
had
be
to come down.
But no, it was stressful.
Speedy process?
Yeah, speedy.
Quickly. Getting decisions isn't always an easy thing to do from a client.
No. And that was, again, this program that we worked on, that was one of the things, and I need to give all the credit in the world to the tribe here. They recognized that. And as you said, you've done some tribal work, and they recognize that. So the tribal council really kind of went to specifically one individual, but really kind of like this core decision-making team. and asked, and then in this case, the CFO, his name is Ani Hariri, and he's kind of our main client with the tribe, and really empowered Ani and said, listen, we know that we can have an impact in our own decision-making process on these things, and we're asking you to move very, very quickly to meet these goals. We are going to step out of that, and we are going to allow you to make these decisions on our behalf and empower you guys to just do what you got to do. And so our entire development team that worked on this went into that and made that very clear, that said, listen, if you want us to meet this budget and this schedule, this is what's required. And we're not going to have time to reevaluate. We're not going to have times to go back and start from over and, do things over, looking at different ways. We got to make decisions and move. And the president of the tribe at that time and the council all bought off on that. And that is how we were able to do it. And that's what I've got to give them all that credit. I mean, it was amazing because I've been involved in another tribal project. I won't dive too deep here, but we did the entire project. A new council came in right before we finished. As we delivered the plans and the specs and the whole project manual, they canceled the project because it was not part of their council that they decided. And this was significant, tens of millions of dollars. And so that's a perfect example of kind of sometimes these things can have an impact that maybe you don't want to see. And so they were amazing about that.
That's pretty incredible, because anything you're working on where decisions are being made by committee or council, or, I did a lot of schools earlier in my career, school boards, who are not even construction or design professionals, can throw all kinds of wrenches into the works and really slow things down. And I asked that on purpose because I knew you had this really short turnaround that you had to get this put together. And it's like, I want to know how you got decisions made. I want to know how you did that.
They let us move, and they let us as a team consider them.
And it's a decision designing architecture to interior, designing it, getting consensus and buy-in of the design, concurrently putting together a drawing, every single decision that's happening, we're literally live documenting in order for us to move as fast as we can. And at the same time, also coordinating with other consultants such as MEP. It was literally a live active show of how we had this client's why of meeting the December GMP deadline in order for us to capture that funding that they had. Sure, we've dealt with many different type of project with a constrained schedule, but maybe perhaps not this scale of it. But without the entire team's common goal, understanding exactly what, the end goal post they were chasing after here, this would have never happened, right? Like everybody understood the clear common goal of what we needed to get to. And that was really beautiful to see.
I'm just guessing. So I also spent 6.5 years of my career writing specs for an MEP firm. I joke that I crossed to the dark side and then back. But I won't tell anybody which discipline was the dark side. You must have had with your consultant team some pretty outstanding communication.
Yes.
I will say it was pretty much daily. I mean, we had to keep the channel going. Otherwise, there was no time for us to process, submit, and then waiting for the responses back. It was just rapid fire, right? So I do think that Consort did a really great job of putting the right team together. And they were very explicit. They knew what the constraints were. So they knew going in what kind of team that they needed from their expertise and personality, all of the above, in order for us to be able to get there.
Yeah. There were roadblocks, Cherise, obviously. I mean, one that comes to mind immediately is when we had a lot of protocols in place and a lot of the things. So I remember a good example is I brought up Ken Atkins, who was really our kind of client rep, and he was guiding a lot of this. He has this experience across the country doing this program. I remember this specifically where he's like, listen, don't wait for everybody. If you need to talk to the structural engineer, if you need to talk to one of the subs that's working with the GC, direct. We have no time for this going through things, right? Well, we were all doing that, and it went fairly well, but there was a time I remember where we were saying there was too many documents flying around. And so we decided you can email each other as much as you want. You can ask questions back and forth as much as you want. But when it comes to actual documentation, everything's going to live on this one site, and that's the documents. So do not email documents back and forth. Everything lives there. This is the live, and we'll constantly be updating those. But we can't just have them crossing in the ether like this all the time, because that was one of the things that we had to pivot a little bit. But you're right. I mean, we had to over communicate significantly. There was a lot of Hannah and I joked a lot. Thursdays were not my favorite day for a long time. I had 4 to 6 hours of meetings on Thursdays because that's when most of the meetings happened. So, but that's what was required. We just constantly had a whole team together, and we were working through, and we were constantly adjusting. Yeah, we were adjusting.
It was pure workshop style, more so than meeting. It's getting answers, getting informations, and then everybody, walked away and knew what they were supposed to work on.
Well, kudos to you, because I've done a lot of projects in my career, and to go outside those kind of traditional lines of communication and allow a little bit more freedom, that can be very dangerous if you don't have, some rules in place, and, that you made that work and still kind of established enough rules to make sure that everybody was looking at the correct and current information. That's, I mean, I already liked your firm, but I keep getting more and more impressed every time I talk to somebody from Mancini.
I think there was definitely a huge sense of empathy across all teammates. We all knew what kind of we're all drinking from fire hoses together. So of course we're human, we're bound to make mistakes, but nobody ever sat there and finger pointed at each other. If something happened and information got missed due to lack of time, of coordination, everybody understood, and we were all there to uplift each other. Again, like I think back and I compare Hualapai projects to any of other projects that I've worked on in my career, and I can't think of any project where there was this level of camaraderie, maybe, and respect for each other. I've just never experienced that. I don't know, Ben, if you have experienced anything like that.
I would agree with that, 100%.
I argue that regularly when I'm teaching or, speaking, I do a lot of mentoring younger professionals, and I tell them all day, every day, relationships are number one.
Yes.
100%.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely number one. You'll get the rest of it done, but if you can't sit down and have a conversation with somebody or can't, figure out, because you have to, I mean, I'm the only spec writer for over 300 people in 12 offices in 2 countries.
Jeez.
Wow.
Including Canada. Actually, our mothership is in Canada. I joke all the time that I have to be a chameleon for every single person, every engineer I work with, every architect I work with, because every human is different. And so how I may need to talk to you is completely different than how I may need to talk to the person sitting next to you in order to be effective. But I don't have time to not be effective. So learning that lesson early, that's actually, I'm glad you said that, because I think that's more important than anything in getting a really great project out the door.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So let's start digging into some details, starting with this site. And I did look it up on a map, by the way. And then I saw this tribal lands, was like, okay, but where's it goes everywhere. Where's the actual project at? And you've confirmed my suspicion that this actual project is kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's not close to any urban area where you can run and buy what you need really quickly.
Yeah.
So let's start with the site. What did you have to work with on this site, and did you get to plan any cool site design features?
That's a good, yeah. Well, as part of the
You're
initial,
laughing.
no, the site was actually very challenging, in maybe different than what you're thinking of, but what we, you know, the site had nothing. So let's start there. It was, as you said, in the middle of kind of nowhere. So the initial explorations, when we went up there, several sites were considered. So there were a lot of factors and a lot of variables that were considered. And if, a few of the sites were in an area, just like you said, in the middle of nowhere. So no infrastructure, period. Native desert landscape. Okay. And so those were some of those. And I remember, because of the speed at which we were going, there was several conversations, and we did take some of the members of the tribe out and drove around Peach Springs and looked at other sites because infrastructure was in place. Right. So as we went through and we looked at it, and we tried to understand, and we looked at all those factors, obviously, the connections to community is important. Visual identity was a significant thing. Cost obviously was a significant thing. But at the end of the day, it was actually another factor that Ani, again, the CFO, pointed out that was really one of the most important things in site selection, which was, if you're looking at a map, so Route 66 literally goes through the middle of Peach Springs. And all the development is basically on the western side of Route 66. On the other side of it is where the new tribal administration building will be. And the reason for that was that he saw this as the only opportunity to bring infrastructure to that side of Route 66 to potentially spark development on that side of the highway. And so that, even though the costs were the most significant for site development, especially on the infrastructure side, that was more important to them to set it up for future development than some of the other factors. And so and by the way, that went through, we had several conversations all the way through. By the way, we're significantly into the design process, and we're still talking about evaluating sites, because that's when the pricing starts coming in, right? When you start to find out, it's going to cost this much to get water. It's this much to do this, that's much to do that. And it's kind of like, okay, guys, do we really want to think about this? Should it be on the other side where we actually have power and water available? So that was part of that conversation. But to answer the question, it was significant. And you can imagine they took, what was it, like 6 months to just get the site ready before we could even get into the foundations.
I remember us doing actually designing of inside. I was in Myth Interiors
Yeah.
package, and then we consider switching the
We
site
rotated
and
it.
whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we did, even on that side, we did go to a couple different locations, because what we were trying to do was, there's significant, as we talked about the traditions, for example, significant things about entry, for example, into these buildings that is important for them from a tradition standpoint. But we were also adapting that and looking at the best place to put it from a earthwork perspective, right? We want to make sure we're the most efficient. We're minimizing too much fill and too much cut, and we're trying to balance it. But we're also working with, one of the more significant things that was difficult is Route 66. It is part of the reservation. It's on the Hualapai Tribe, but it's part of ADOT, Arizona Department of Transportation. So we do have them to deal with. We do have BIA and the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Those are complicated processes that are going right through the middle. And so you can imagine, as you're looking at that and you're balancing where it lives, to Hannah's point, we were significantly into the design of the building when we were still massaging exactly where it lives on the site. So yeah, there was a lot of fun conversations.
Target. It was constantly moving target.
Well, I really have a lot of respect for the tribe in valuing future growth at, because it's so easy to just get lost. Just, this is the budget for this project.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And so, and not think, further ahead sometimes. And then regret it later. Or, gosh, we should have done this, way back when, and then it's too late.
I would love working with clients that are willing to do that. I can think of a few projects that have, they set the parameters early on, and these are what we're going to live by. And then they can make these decisions. Like, as you said, perfect example of this one was weighing the benefit of paying more now to potentially do something better later.
Yeah.
And more often than not, unfortunately, and I get it, by the way, I understand, especially in the world that we live in today, sometimes you just got to make the cheapest decision right now because it's too much of an impact. But one of the reasons I like working on public work, which, as a firm, and Hannah and I have done this quite some time, I love to balance both public and private work. Public work is usually clients that are hanging on to something for a long time, and they tend to have a little bit of a longer vision when it comes to an ROI discussion. And sometimes that's really, really important. And I think that's going to become even more important as we continue to be in this world of uncertainty around all these types of things.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I was just going to say that the most common place I saw that kind of planning in advance, my first 22 years, my first architecture firm I worked in, they only did schools.
Mm.
Public work.
Yeah.
Cut my teeth on public work. If you can do public work, you can do any work.
Mm.
But, they would do these master plans that are like 10 years in the future, to be prepared and think about how these things were going to come together and materials they use so they'd be consistent among buildings, particularly universities.
Mm-hmm.
But I have not encountered a lot of that future thought in the same way in private work.
Yeah.
It
just doesn't happen
this
as
building
often.
in this moment. Yeah. Even if they're going to stay in it.
Well, you know what I love too about this one? Hopefully this doesn't take us too long here, Cherise, but I love that attitude that Ani and the rest of the tribal leadership had of an understanding of that, right? From a longer view. But oftentimes in my experience anyway, when you do that, they tend to go back, and when it comes to the actual work itself, they tend to be a little bit more conservative. They're not going to kind of explore new ways of doing things necessarily because it's not as safe. There's too much uncertainty. What I love, and I'm sure you're going to ask about the buildings themselves, and you'll understand this in a minute too, but to have somebody that not only from a site perspective, he did look that way and they decided to do something like that, but at the same time, they were willing to explore a different way of doing the design and architecture itself. And I'm sure we'll talk about that, but that approach, which was a little bit different, was something that made this project probably as successful as it has been so far.
So in my experience in tribal projects, they have their own rules. I actually worked on one not that terribly long ago, about a year ago. Working in the specs, they had their own general conditions for a project. And I looked at this thing and I'm like, whoa, I got to go do some homework. I've worked with, general conditions forever, but this is language contractual language that I had not encountered before. They have their own laws and their own rule. They're a sovereign nation. What does your approval process look like for your building? I mean, assume you're not going down the road to whatever that other town was, 45 minutes down the road to get your building plans approved.
It's all them.
How did that work?
We did have a moment as our teams and extended teams were working on our, permit set and CDs and whatnot. We all just kind of turns like, hey, what rule do we have to follow? Who are we submitting this drawing to? What is it? Who do we get the checks and balances? So that was a little bit personally foreign to me because this is sort of my entryway into working with the tribal for the first time. So I think that we kind of followed the general best practice guideline of architecturally what we should be doing. But ultimately, we did had somebody code reviewer that Consor has hired to review our drawings to make sure that everything is aligned to the expectation. Ben, I don't know if you have anything more additional to add to that.
Exactly. So this gets back to early what we were talking about too, Cherise, where when we came in, we brought an entire development team, really. I mean, and it's all the way through, right? Soup to nuts. So VRX is the company that she's referring to. They were actually in the interview, by the way, at the very, very onset of this entire adventure. VRX was in the room, and Ira, if he's ever listening, he's our guy. But we brought that to the table as well, right? So this is all self-contained. And so the approval process did need to be reinvented somewhat in some ways for this because of the speed at which we were moving. And
Yeah.
some of it had to be, a lot of what we're seeing today is a lot of GCs, for example, can go out and, let's say they're doing whatever work, they can self-approve, right? That part of the process is becoming something where we're able to do that, right? You can do self-certify. So it's kind of like that in a certain extent. And then we obviously had to have the leadership of the tribe buy off on that from the front and say, listen, this has got to be our deliverable list for this needs to maybe be simplified a little bit. But really what it was us putting ourselves in and having our own QA QC process, having our own kind of inspections. Everything was lined up and it was all part of the team. And so that's the way we were able to move at the speed that we did, was having it basically baked in from the beginning.
Yeah.
That must have been kind of nice. I'm not trashing any building officials, but we all know, and depending on the state you're in, that process can be
Yes,
long and windy
Cumbersome.
and sometimes difficult.
there's good and bad. I would
Yeah.
say it's not like we didn't have people from the tribe involved to get, our certificate of occupancy or anything like that. We still had people involved. It was maybe a little less cumbersome than what we've seen in the past, but here's the kind of flip side of that too, Cherise. So Ira has my personal cell phone number. He knows how to find me in any time when he needs something, and he will call me out if we're not delivering what we promised to deliver, right? And so there's the flip side, is like that access, and it's just like Hannah and myself. Like Hannah gives me crap every single day, and it comes from a good place, but it's right there in your face. And so that was the difference. And I'd say that was, again, really good and bad, because there was no shortcuts. You got to deliver on what you promise you're going to do. And you're going to get called out in your conversations every day if you're missing out on or missing something.
And in a way, I think we put a little bit of that pressure on ourselves as well, knowing the fact that, there is in this jurisdiction elements that we got to follow. So part of the Mancini process, we even had the folks who weren't involved in a project did a QA QC for us, just looking at it purely from fresh perspective. So our technical director, who sits in New York, they're reviewing the projects to ensure that we're not missing anything, or they're not seeing something that we didn't notice because we're so ingrained into the project. So I do think that there was a bit of a level of pressure. Maybe we put it on ourselves. Maybe it was kind of unspoken pressure, but there was that as well, which is healthy, I think.
Well, I would think from a
In a
risk
way.
standpoint, knowing you're not going to have these building officials checking all the boxes in the more traditional way, that you would probably be checking those things a little bit more closely. Well, and then you had Ira.
Yeah.
Right.
You just had a building official, kind of the code official all the way through, calling you at 3:00 in the morning. What the hell am I looking at?
Exactly.
Oh my.
Bet that was fun.
He's a fun guy, though. We're talking a lot about Ira. He'd probably love that we're talking about him right now.
Yes.
I kind of got that impression just from the way you're talking about Ira.
Yeah, he's fun.
So let's talk about the building. Let's start with the exterior design. So tell me in more detail about the motivation for the shape. You started touching on that in an earlier question, the shape and the connections, and some of the materials that I'm taking 2 questions and putting them in one. Some of the materials you chose.
Well, and Hannah, I'll have her chime in here in a second too, because when we approach these things, again, not just from speed, because this is the way that Hannah and I work, is this idea of kind of inside out, outside in. So that's really important for us to start there. But the strategy for the buildings was, it's funny, there's an initial sketch that happened very, very, very early, actually. And that became very close to what this ended up being. And really, it kind of came from this idea that, as we talked about earlier, there's a challenge. You're in a remote location. Finding skilled labor was going to be a challenge in somewhere so far away. Finding a way to maximize dollars, and meet all the things that we wanted to do. We were trying to figure out a way to do that. And of course, costs are already elevated in the environment we're in now, but being in the middle of nowhere. So all of these things started to factor in. And there was this thought of, well, what if we could create, using something like PEMB or pre-engineered metal buildings in a way that would it can go up very fast. It's a fairly simple process to put these buildings together. And it really kind of started to kind of formulate this idea. And it's kind of funny. The initial sketch was this idea of multiple modules of this building, and they would all be connected, as Hannah was talking about, a connection that went through. So what we thought of was like, okay, you have this off-the-shelf system that's pretty standard, pretty simple. So the actual labor of putting the skin of this building together could be pretty straightforward. But then how do we kind of customize it just enough to make it special and unique, right? And so that's what this first sketch showed, was these kind of 4 modules of a building that were connected. And then it started to really come together as we started to realize, and again, we're combining this while we're still doing our research too, Cherise, right? And so there was 3 things that we talked about. This idea of a village, this kind of element of a village, which was important. And then we had this idea of as she talked about, Hualapai means people of the tall pines, and the Grand Canyon is a significant part of their tradition and their history. And they are nomadic people that would move up and down the canyon at different seasons of the year. So the canyons themselves became important. And then lastly, obviously, the river was significant. The Colorado River is something that means a lot to them. And so you can imagine, we have these little sketch that shows these kind of modules of a building connecting in a village form. And then you have the canyons that kind of create these kind of angled kind of
Peaks and balances.
peaks and valleys. And then this river that goes to connect everyone together. And that's where really the building kind of started to form itself in a lot of ways. And so each one of these modules had a different kind of angle and slope. And what we ended up doing, really, there's only two versions of it, but they're mirrored. And it just uses the PEMB system. And then our connector became this kind of windy river that was the connection between all 4 modules. And that was where the connections came, that it became 1 building instead of 4. And so that was really kind of the overall big idea of it. And then it was just the positioning of them, looking at the fenestration where windows would be, for example, trying to protect them, from the sun exposure in certain areas. And so playing with those angles a little bit. And then lastly, the material, because of the system, what was generated, it kind of became a metal panel building. But we did start to kind of look and start to feel, what did we want to do? And at the end of the day, what you'll see if you see renderings of it and photography soon, is the outside kind of became this, it's just standing seam metal. So there's a texture to it, but then we added color that was all pulled from this desert landscape and from the canyon that lives around them. So it's a very pattern, and with, as you know, most native, weaving and textures and colors are very important to them. And so we went through, and I remember having these conversations with the cultural committee in Ani, and I remember the first time he saw the rendering, and he was just like, he kept saying, he's like, you just get it. I don't understand you. Like, this is Hualapai. That's what he had said. This is Hualapai. And so the color and the texture was something that was important to him, and he loved it. And then the idea was to take the blue sky and the turquoise, which is important for them. Just, the Navajo turquoise is something important. And so any of those kind of, if we have the outer skin, that's the texture and the color, the inside became much more simplified. And that blue, turquoise, blue sky became kind of the inside. And so that really became the entire skin of the building. And it happened very, very quickly, believe it or not. I know, like, we studied things, but it was almost as if what we were exploring, right, Hannah, like from the very beginning, what we were exploring, it just kind of went there on its own.
Clicked. Yeah,
If
it
that makes
clicked.
sense.
And the scale and proportion too, as Ben was talking about those various different metal panel, we play with the various different width of those panel as a modular and trying to create a little bit of this rhythm. And I think even that added additional layers. And ultimately, we want this building in Peach Spring. Yes, we want to be recognizable, but we didn't want it to feel foreign, that it's somebody else's design coming and plopped in the middle of Peach Spring. So I think with the color tonality, the scale and proportion, the texture, and even playing with the various different undulating height there, it fit within the
Yeah.
site that we all selected. It just felt like it should have been there. It belonged there. And I think that the turquoise, the tying back into the water, which is so crucial to them, it's a way to accentuate and playing the contrast of it. Um, so I think, Ani, when he's saying, yes, you guys just get what we're looking for, I think all of that modernizing perhaps a little bit, but not losing the sight of who they are and their value and the humbleness. And all of that just kind of came together. And it was definitely a really fast process because we did a couple of iteration of rendering. We showed the color ranges, and buying consensus was super fast.
Okay, I have to ask. I forgot to warn you. I, on occasion, go down a rabbit hole.
It's all good.
As we're talking about that, all I kept thinking was metal building, Arizona,
Mhm.
Mm.
hot as Hades.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, like, what did you do in your wall assembly, so to speak, to keep it from being that way inside?
Yeah. Well, one, we're in northern Arizona, so we're not quite as it's still warm. Let's not pretend it's
Still
not.
hot.
It's still hot, but it's not
The
quite.
sun's strong.
Yeah, the sun is strong. So the wall assembly itself is pretty simple. So we got the advantage when you're looking at the pre-engineered metal buildings, you have kind of a primary structural system, and it
Mhm.
creates on those two sides those really thick walls. And so what it allowed us to do is, that is a great thing right there when you've got these super thick, I think we were 2.5 feet deep walls on two sides of a building, right?
Like an insulator.
And so you become you've got a lot of dead space in there. And obviously we were able to insulate that in a couple of different ways. So we have the system itself on the PEMV module. They actually do have their own insulation systems. But then we also have furring that one of the things that we did want this to be was we don't expose the primary structural system very much, just in a couple spots, really. There's not a lot of it. And so outside of that, the walls are all pretty much like you would see in a typical office building. So we furred everything out. So again, a lot of ability for us to kind of protect and create those great R-value walls that we need. And that, as I was saying, is we played with the way that the modules sit. Sometimes the thick walls are on the long ends and sometimes they're on the short ends, depending on what we were doing. And again, that gets back to the orientation of the buildings and the angles that we were playing with. So that also allowed us to protect fenestration where needed. So we didn't have a lot of direct sunlight in certain locations, but still keep our views and what we want for ambient light. So all of those things contributed. So the system itself, the metal buildings are actually fantastic here. If they're done well and you fur them out and you've got the right insulation in there. And it's, again, what I think is really nice about it is it's fairly off the shelf. There's not a lot there that you're going to have a hard time going out and finding somebody to build for you pretty easily, right? And so that's how we did it, was a combination of, and for me, by the way, I've worked on, projects that have won COAT National AI Awards, very sustainable. I did the first commercial office building in Arizona that was net zero energy. Most every decision when it comes to sustainability and protecting climate comes down to very, very fundamental decisions at the beginning of the process. If you do those right, you're 90% there. And that's really, for us, and Hannah and I, that's the way we've approached design for quite some time. We want to make the good fundamental decisions at the beginning, and that solves most of the issues. And that's what we did with Hualapai Tribe.
Nice. I wouldn't want to sit in an oven, so that's good
Yeah.
to know.
It's not fun.
No. I visited, I was on my way to a conference somewhere and I had for whatever crazy reason, an 8-hour layover in Phoenix. And we have close family friends there, like a little brother to me. So I called them up and said, come get me. I do not want to sit in an airport for 8 hours. Let's go to lunch. And he came, I was standing inside the airport waiting to watch him pull up. saw him pull up, I walked outside and it was like 116 that day. And I hadn't seen him in a number of years. He gets out of his car. I didn't even say hello. I just said, "Oh my God, you live in hell." Like, how do you deal with this? And he said, "Well, we just don't go outside in the summer."
That's our winter. Yeah.
Why
Inside,
move to
inside.
Arizona if you can't
because the
go outside?
remainder of the years are amazing.
Cherise,
Okay.
right now we're in, September, beginning of this is the point where we're all asking that question too here that live here for a long time.
Yeah.
We're like, what in the heck am I doing here?
What do we do?
We're done. Just get me out.
I'm in Oregon. We get up to 90 and we start getting cranky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's
Well,
like
you guys, it's a dry heat.
Yeah, that is a saving grace.
It is a saving grace. And I come from East Coast, so some days I did questions like, what did I do? But I love it here.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about year round for me, but so let's go inside the building. So describe for me the different types of spaces. Let's start there. Different types
Sure.
of spaces inside the building.
Yeah, so as I was saying earlier, with the 4 separate building, really building A and B, that connector was a reception. So where people letting the community in, and large enough where if they're having affairs and whatnot, they can host the different vendors. But essentially, we had a council chamber, which was a very special design and very passion project for Ani, the CFO. We had a conference area as well as a training room where people can utilize. And then as you go into the other parts of the building, starting from building B and moving forward, and those are really dedicated to the admin office, the people who actually works there. And first time I recall walking through their current admin building, the one feeling that I got was they made shift the sense of community, and they built whatever pieces of furniture they've got, they built the culture of their office by making it more theirs and hanging things. And it wasn't about how fancy their furnitures were, but it was about you could sense them and how much they enjoy being with each other. The only downfall was how neander for them to get to another another
Piecemeal.
teammate's office. So it was exactly everything was just kind of glued together in a way. So when Ben and I were really looking at, how do we really marry that, all the concept that we thought about from architecture exterior, how do we bring that inside? What are some of the key things? And that really, again, became about them. It's about their connection, the people connection. And how do we bring that sense of community for them? So there are strategically located a cafe function where they can actually congregate, whether they're socializing and celebrating, birthdays and, anniversary or whatnot, but also giving them ample of amount of various different type of spaces where they can work out of. The places where they simply didn't have is a lot of conference rooms or even smaller focus area. So we emphasize on those as well. And even looking through furniture solutions when we're looking at even their primary workplaces, giving them a strategic storage function that they truly need so that they don't have clutter of papers everywhere. Um, so we really looked at much more of a programming, a functional component of things to support their needs rather than them having to feel like they had to piecemeal a lot of things to make it their own. But really, the council chamber, that was a special, we spent a lot of time on that. And it was a very passion project, of course, to the council members as well as the CFO. One, we want them to have a place of community because it's not just a council member having a meeting there. They invited community in. And we're dealing with also the volume of the space, as Ben was talking about PMB buildings. Um, we were dealing with one side of the building being 20 feet tall, all the way coming down to what was it, 12 feet or somewhat. So you're really dealing with this volume of the space to create the sense of grand nature. And that wasn't important for, again, mimicking that people of tall pines and how do we subjectively bring that information inwards. Um, we also wanted to be very cognizant with acoustic solutions, especially in the council chamber. We wanted this place to be a place of a bit of a grin and kind of influence the behavior of how people utilize a space as well. So we use a various different type of product that help us to design that the texture that we talked about from architectural exterior side, and we use this product of felt material and felt fin to be able to create the textures in the front and the back, and that kind of ran up the wall and the ceiling as well. So when you're in that space, you're kind of ingrained with the amount of textures,
Hmm.
and the variety and the rhythm that we were mimicking from architecture. So
Yeah.
so that was probably special space
Even the
that we
windows,
spent a lot of time.
right? I don't know
Yeah,
if you saw
linear
we sent you a
windows.
rendering
Yeah,
of that, Cherise, but you see the linear vertical windows. Imagine, I remember we talked to them about this idea. Imagine you're standing in a pine forest and you see every once in a while, you just see this vertical gap through the trees. And so we tried to bring that all into that space as well.
yeah. The sliver of light that you're casting between all those tall pines, how mystical and almost spiritual that was, and that was kind of mimicking what we're trying to mimic in our interiors of the windows.
I love that because as soon as you said you're standing in the forest, and the
Yeah.
first thing that popped into my brain is that light between the
Yeah. You
trees.
just see it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's magical, right? And
it
and
is.
some component of that, and like I said, they're incredibly humble people, right? They're not about glitz. They're being very practical and um they appreciate every little component that they're receiving. And even in our reception area, we really wanted to have a place of focus. When you first enter, what is that wow moment without being glitzy? But one of the things that Ben and I were really influenced by is the color usage with those weavings and whatnot. It's a very vibrant primary colors, but the way that they come together with the different scales and proportion, it just creates such a beautiful element and the weaving of the colors. And we really wanted to experience some of that when people first come in very subliminal way, but they felt it was too much. It was kind of they didn't want us to slap people with this is Hualapai, right? It's like they wanted a little more subliminal message. So another way that we did was we again mimicking the blade that's in the council chamber. We wanted to introduce a little bit of warmth utilizing wood. And it's create this optical. So when you're first walking in, all you're seeing this very organic wood fin wall in front behind the reception
Yeah.
desk.
Textured
But
wood.
as you're walking through the space, you start to see the unveiling of Hualapai, the map of the band, in a
Well,
very colorful.
geography map. Each band had kind of a
Yeah.
territory. And so there's this
Okay.
beautiful map that we've found early on in our research that showed the geography of the 13 bands that made up the Hualapai tribe. And so that's what she says. Like, so you see the map of the bands, and that's kind of behind the wood texture a little bit. And it's all those primary colors that she's talking about.
Yeah. So as you're moving through, you're also it's creating additional layer of movement and creating a different experiences as you're in the lobby. So those were some of the key things that we spent a lot of emphasis with the Hualapai tribe and their council members to get their consensus.
I was curious after having done that interview about that hospital in Canada. Did any of this tribe's particular customs or ceremonies or culture influence other interior aesthetics?
I think all of them. I mean, that was always in the root of every decisions that we've made, right? Is it for them? Does it align with their core belief? Does it align with their value of the people, right? And I think that's where we really focused on creating that gathering spaces for the people. We never wanted them to lose that connection. But the materiality wise, it was really stripping down to the nature. Looking at much more timeless pieces that feels much more natural. That's not glitzy, and we know that this is going to stand in place for long haul. That was something that we emphasized a lot. It wasn't about those gimmicky colors or gimmicky current in trend of materials. We really want this to become a timeless building, even 10 years down the road. If somebody's walking into the admin building, for them to say, wow, this is really beautiful, elegant space.
Yeah. We definitely tried to incorporate, that was one of the things that actually Cherise is really interesting because their tradition for them has been handed down for so long. There's a little bit of a different
Mhm.
opinion at times. So, as a good example, one of the things that we talked a lot about was this idea of entry into a building, entry into a room from the east. If you've seen a lot of kind of traditions, native traditions, east is sunrise, birth, beginning, entry was important. For some members, it wasn't as important. For some, it was. So it was about having those conversations. And then I think, a good example was in the council chambers, we actually had a lot of conversations because we wanted that room to function in a way that could be kind of multi-purpose for them for different types of ceremonies, because they will be doing ceremonies there. But they're also functioning as a tribal council chamber. They have formal meetings. They have, just like any other city hall that you'll see in the world. And so there was a lot of conversation. Is it something that's fixed seating or non-fixed seating? And we had a lot of conversations with them because at the end of the day, they decided to go with a fixed seating, but with enough room at the front for us to kind of move things around to give them a little bit of space. So those types of things, it's interesting, right? Because you're saying, I think your question is really, and we did really try to think about that a lot in every decision. It was important to consider that. But sometimes the more, the needs for now, and I wouldn't say ultimately were more of a priority. I just say we had a balance, maybe is the best way to put it.
Yeah. But I think we looked at local materials
Oh,
too.
materiality was, that's
Yeah. There was a chocolate stone is something that was locally produced.
they have a quarry and they call it chocolate stone. And so that
It's just like,
it's
that's new to
it's
me.
a
Explain.
slate stone. It's just got a very dark chocolate color.
It's very
And
brown.
it's very brown. And it was something that they were very proud of, and they were like, "Hey, it's on our land. We want to source it for something." The thing was, it was a tough color to put in a lot of places, and so we had to find
Mhm.
certain ways to utilize it that made sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, the chocolate stone.
The
Well, I
chocolate
thought it
stone.
was funny that you mentioned the whole thing about the entry and sunrise and sunset. How
Mm.
it's important to some people and not to others. Another interview I did very early on in podcast history was, and I'm going to draw a blank on the official name, so forgive me, but it's a Native American museum in Oklahoma.
The First Nation Museum.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
And that came up,
Yes.
and looking out of your teepee, and things have to be situated a certain way so that you can either watch that sunrise or sunset.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a really, I don't know, I was kind of moved by that, like
Mhm.
that being the driving factor.
Yeah, the
It was an
creation
absolute.
stories, like all of those things,
Yeah.
each cardinal directions have colors associated with them. And, certain tribes have, to your example on the teepee, I was working with another tribe and finding out, when they're in it, and this is specific to Navajo, but, as you look in a hogan, which is what their traditional dwelling, certain things happen in certain areas of the hogan. You eat here, you sleep here, right? And so those types of things are really, really important when you're thinking about the laying out of a building floor plan, for example.
Mhm.
But yeah, you're right. And it's, I don't know, I love learning about that and seeing how that could impact the way that we do things. I am such a contextualist, Sharice, when it comes to design. I love to be fed many, many things that start to influence, because I feel like designing in a vacuum is impossible in my opinion. But anyway, I love those things too. And it's so cool to learn about the different traditions that these different tribes have.
Well, and you never know, hearing about one of those things, how it might inspire something that you do with the
Mhm.
building
Yes.
to honor
All the
Absolutely.
time.
I mean, I just love the history and the ceremony of it, and
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
commitment to the past, but also moving into the future. I loved that interview about that museum.
Yeah.
It was
Mm.
just, I mean, that took 20 years to get built.
Well, and
Wow.
think about how many tribes are involved on that one. That's why it took
Yeah,
so.
well, that's part of why it took for that in the government giving funding, taking it away, giving
Yes.
funding. It was
A lot of
depending
tribes.
on which color of the spectrum was running the show in the country at the time, whether they would give
Exactly.
the tribes the funding. It was very interesting. But
Complex.
so I love to hear about something that was difficult. So tell me about just one notable design challenge that you may not have talked about yet that you faced and how you solved it.
Oh, good question.
Which one?
I think
Um,
I'll start, Hannah. You can think about it for
yeah,
a
go
second. I
ahead.
think I know we talked about it a little bit, but the way that we were able to take this idea of, again, the off the shelf PMB, right? These pre-engineered metal buildings, something that's off the shelf, but then to kind of make them customized to a certain extent. One of the most challenging parts of that, which was kind of I didn't expect, is the 4 module building modules, pretty straightforward in the way that we did those. The connectors became a huge challenge because as we brought together the team that was working to build the PEMB modules, they had never done anything like these connectors. And so the back and forth of that and building these little, because they were a little bit unique. I mean, the first version, as we talked about earlier, was this idea of the river, the meandering river, and it was very kind of soft and curvy. And they ended up becoming a lot more straight than curvy because of that. But then even then it became something that was a challenge of how you actually get the physical connection to work. Because even at the initial onset too, we really wanted those to be glass kind of gaskets, right? You got these hard metal, especially the outside thick walls, right? That had that texture. Then you had the flat panels that were the innie moments on the ends that were the turquoise. And then the idea of softening things up with these glass connections, is that where the main entry is? And that's where Hannah, she talked about, for example, the break room. The break room's on another one of those connections, and that goes out to an outdoor patio space that's in these kind of in between the modules, these little canyons, right? And so how those physically connected from a detailing standpoint, for example, knowing a good example, we're a single story building and they're like, well, we're going to need an expansion joint. We're going to need a significant expansion joint. I'm like, we're 20 feet tall building, guys. We need that big of an expansion joint. Well, metal buildings breathe and they move a lot. And so the detailing of those became a challenge. And that was something I'd say I didn't anticipate that one as much. I thought it would be a little bit more simple.
And it did impact that detailing kind of later on
Oh,
once the
yeah.
design was baked, impacted interiors as well, and substantially reducing space from, whether it was a conference room or a huddle room. So all of a sudden, we're starting to lose more square footage there. But when you're thinking about this connector pieces, as we talked about those undulating ceilings, right? And it's not that each of the buildings are same ceiling height. We're talking about they're tilted
Yeah,
and
everything's
they
sloped.
have a different slope angle. So finding the datum line that worked for all of those variances that give us enough for us to make sure that there's a mechanical unit that can go through and the structural and all of that. um, it did require a lot of hand-holding and a lot of coordination, and sure, it did impact the interiors, but at the end of the day, we were able to pivot. It wasn't so substantial where we had to lose a program. We're pivoting quite a bit to borrow inches and from subsequent spaces, essentially.
Was the contractor helpful in solving that problem? I mean,
Oh,
sometimes
yeah.
I think when you're looking to do something out of the ordinary,
Yeah.
sometimes the
Yeah.
best first call to make is to the contractor.
Well, they had to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and we were fortunate to have So we had two contractors on this because of the type of work we had. A contractor out of Colorado, SEMA, was the primary, and then Kitchell here locally was kind of the vertical contractor. And so I mean, and again, they were part of the original chase of this project, so we were embedded to this from the beginning, right? So we had that, as Hannah talked about, this camaraderie and able to. And just this morning, I was, we're talking about floor box locations right now. So I mean, so we're we have no problem, getting at the cell phone and just calling each other up and talking through these issues. I think that we had to have that with the way that the speed and the nature of this project, it was absolutely critical.
I have to admit that one of my favorite things to do is sit back with a cocktail and watch a contractor and an architect duke it out over what the architect thinks they want to design and what the contractor thinks they can build. But they are some of the most fascinating conversations because they always end up where you need to go.
Yeah.
But
it's totally different approaches, right?
Yeah. I have a couple of very good friends. They happen to be married and they're both architects by profession, now working for a large general contractor here in town.
A lot of those happening.
Every time I go out to their farm or hang out with them, because they've worked on both sides of the fence, they are solidly contractors now, though, since they left architecture. I'll be surprised if they ever go back to architecture.
As we said, they went to the dark side.
Yeah. I'm not saying what
maybe not.
I worked in construction at one point, too. I'm not saying what the dark side is. Speaking of construction, this project is currently under construction. When is it supposed to? I did not see. When is it supposed to be complete?
It'll be complete next year, so 2026. Let's say Q3.
How far of a drive is it from Vegas to where this?
2.5 hours. So Vegas is actually
it's
closer.
not going to be done sooner.
Yeah, it's about 2.5 hours.
Potentially be in Vegas in November. I was like, maybe I'll do a little
come by.
side road trip and check it out.
Actually, in November, you'll be pretty. Or is it this November?
This November.
Oh yeah.
No. I might just have to go to Vegas for my birthday again next year, so I can see it. I don't often get to see in person the projects that I do an interview on. So if I'm in the neighborhood of one of them, if I can, I try to go.
We'll come meet you.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
I will seriously consider that. Construction.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk. I mean, I understand that we've got a ways to go here. And I read even you brought it up that one of the challenges for construction is this remote location. And I imagine, especially right now with this crazy stuff going on with tariffs and everybody's struggling to get skilled labor and then getting materials up there, which costs are already going up because of that. Don't get me started. How has the location of this project and the access to skilled labor and those materials affected, you don't have to give me any numbers, but how has that affected the project cost so far?
I would. So I'm going to give you kind of interesting two answers here. A lot, but in a way that was completely understood and planned for, if that makes sense. So, I mean, you can kind of see our strategy from the beginning was knowing that was going to be an issue. We would never have gone down the road of using pre-engineered metal buildings if we didn't anticipate that being a problem. Did it have necessarily, did it really help a lot? I hope so. I think it did. But our costs were still elevated pretty significantly because of where we are, and that's understood. We went into this and had a lot of early planning and a lot of strategy that we had at the front end to try to mitigate as much impact as we possibly could. And that was the whole reason for this team and the way that it was developed, and really the way that the leadership has kind of put this kind of strategy together. They're working nationally is for exactly that reason. So I guess there wasn't a whole lot of kind of hitting us. We had one instant of tariff, and I think Hannah, you could probably chat about that, and it wasn't even on the admin building, actually, now that I think about that, we had one tariff impact so far on this entire suite, actually, Cherise. So remember I was telling you about the rec park? That is the only time we had, there's a beautiful, the center kind of space in that whole rec park. And there's a gorgeous, the native, like the tribal seal, like the seal from their flag
Mm-hmm.
is in the ground. And the stone that was utilized as part of that had this very special dye and the way that they put the tiling together. And that came from outside of the country. So that happened in the middle of it. And we were impacted by that from a, not expecting at all to be hit by tariffs for that. That was the only time that we've had tariffs hit us so far. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not somewhere sprinkled in. I think, I know. Furniture actually is another one that we might get hit on. And Hannah, you could
We
bring
did.
a little
We
bit,
did get hit on.
but it's not bad. Like huge pieces. They kept telling us it was like the hardware for this or the screw or this little thing or that come from different parts of the world.
The problem with the furniture is while you don't know where the pieces are coming from, right? So while the final assembly may be US, but there's a mechanism perhaps in your task chair or whatever that may come from places outside of the US. So, as we were talking about, we had a very specific budget that was very important to the client and schedule, but to accommodate the budget, the tariff, while it wasn't substantial, but it did impact the budget. It did impact the overrun of the budget. So we did have to look at a more cost efficient options of, not losing the design or initial spec, but are there areas where we need to look to find that concession? And we did. Did we 100% recoup the cost of tariff? No, but um, we found the middle ground of it. And those are unfortunate places where nobody expected, nobody planned for it, unfortunately. And the furniture selection has been done for over 6 months now. So we just had to, like the entirety of the project, we just had to kind of,
Roll with it.
be nimble and flexible.
So hopefully that answers the question. I mean, I think we knew
Yeah.
there was going to be impact, but we had strategies in place to kind of mitigate it as best as we could.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that it just popped in my head just because of an interview I did the other day, and I can say this out loud because I don't usually tell anybody about my interviews, but this one will come out after that one, so I won't be letting any cats out of the bag. But it's a law library in Bhutan, in the Himalayas.
Wow.
It looks like somebody just dropped this, and they can only build traditional ways there. That's their building code. It has to be traditional. It looks like somebody dropped this in the middle of the lower foothills of the Himalayas.
Interesting.
But this is like a remote location. And one of the things I found very interesting in this interview is the architect I was interviewing said basically the construction team lived on site in tents and huts in order to get the project done. What is your skilled labor is hard to find as it is, but this is the closest place you're getting is Peach Springs, correct?
Yeah. No, housing actually was a conversation early on in the process. We talked about, again, strategy, right? There was discussion about, do we build housing as part of this process? Do we, is it about putting up some kind of temporary housing? And at the end of the day, basically the GC team, Bosima and Kitchell, put together a plan that did not require going out and building any new housing. They worked with the lodge there to secure a certain amount of rooms there, as well as over in Kingman, which is about 45 minutes away. And they put a strategy together that would kind of account for it. And so, there were certain, we even talked about, I told you there's one lodge and there's a restaurant at the lodge and there's one little gas station and that's it. And so there was worries about how do we feed construction workers, for example? Like, do we need to, and this is where a lot of, I think we had conversations about that's an opportunity for the tribe. A lot of our early planning meetings was significant kind of, as Hannah said, workshops up in Peach Springs. They saw that as an opportunity where we had tribal members, and I'm not even kidding you, they were literally outside of they have this little multi-purpose building. They're outside grilling and they're making Navajo tacos for us. And that was the business. Like they got contracted, quote unquote, to be able to provide the food for us for the 2 days that we were there workshopping. So this was a business opportunity for members of the community. And that's one of the things we've loved, by the way, that this attitude of seeing opportunity in it, they saw that. And so they didn't need to build housing, but those types of conversations were absolutely part of the planning. 100%.
Well, that's what was popping in my head as you were describing this place with one restaurant
Yeah.
and one gas station. And I know what a construction crew looks like on site. How are they eating? Where are they sleeping? But oftentimes, sometimes economic opportunities on tribal land are few and far between.
Yes.
And having the lodge be booked up for however many months.
You can imagine the positive impact that's had on the economic, output for the city itself, knowing that you've got. And by the way, the construction team that's involved, they're working not just on the admin building before that, and at the same time, basically, they're working on the veterans memorial. They're working on the park before that. So this is a team that's rotating. So you're going to have 2.5, 3 years probably of consistent teams there working on different projects.
Yeah. What a unique way for a project to give back to the community it's building for.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the advantages
I'd be running
of our program.
out and running a food truck.
Exactly.
There are people doing that. 100%.
Or an ice cream truck. I always wanted to drive an ice cream truck.
The Navajo tacos are very popular.
Yes. Yes, it is.
So what would you say has been the biggest lesson learned, at least so far, from this project that made you a better architect going forward?
For me, sorry, do you want to go, Hannah?
No, go.
I was going to say, this grounded me a little more. Not to get emotional about it, but I know we've talked about it. I've never been involved in a project where the CFO is presenting to a council crying.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And that had an impact on us. I've never heard clients being like, you're showing them renderings and we get that. We really get this. So I think that perspective grounding me a little bit more was one of the most impactful parts of the project. So I'd say for me, that's probably the biggest.
Yeah, I think to add to that, for me, might be humbling. Always remembering at the end of what you're creating, we're not creating just a product. There is people attached to it at the end. There are people who are impacted by anything we're creating in small ways possible to enhance their daily lives. And I think what Ben's talking about, that was my first ever council meeting that I sat in. And I talk about this with our clients and our teammates. We hope when we come into this profession as design and architectural industry, we hope that what we're doing is making an impact on people. And sometimes it feels a little bit thankless job because people just kind of expect you to just come up with the idea, do it faster, press that button, everything comes alive. So often case, I think it's really easy to lose sight in why we're doing this. And I have to say, being in that moment, in that council meeting surrounded by the publics and the council members, all talking about, feeling very emotional about what they're getting at the end of the day, it kind of brought down to why. Why are we doing this? Right? And I felt very humbled and honored to be in that environment, to be part of the team. They chose us to be part of the team to impact their lives for better. So I would always take away that experience with reminder that why I'm in this profession and why I do why I love what I do.
Everybody should, I think, get to have that experience. Ben, you almost made me cry.
Sorry.
No, just to imagine any human being sitting there saying to you, "You mean I get that?"
Yeah. Can you imagine it? I've never
let's just like you're just stabbing me right in the heart when I hear that. Of course you get that.
Yeah.
It's
It's
We
such a
deserve that,
gift.
and
Yeah.
boy, I could see how. I'm not talking to you two again. You're going to be like my
Oh,
fourth
sure.
podcast that made me cry.
Good job,
I'm a
Ben.
big marshmallow. Don't worry about it. They're used to me by
I
now.
love it.
I mean,
But
that
I
one,
do love that. I mean, it helps remind you because we all work in
yeah.
this crazy busy world where it's just get it done, I
Yeah.
need it now. And people forget to take that moment
Hmm.
Yeah.
to get to experience just the kind of impact you're making and
Yeah.
that gratefulness
Yep.
to be a part of the process. And I think that's a game changer to remind you why we do what we do.
Absolutely. And I
Spec Writer was
wish
not in my life plan.
it's a very important job, though, Cherise. It is an absolutely important job. I wish that everybody can experience. It was such a gift
Yes.
of experiencing that. I don't know whether I'll experience it ever again, but it was a tremendous gift. And I wish people in our profession can experience what we felt that day just for a little moment because it brings things to perspective.
And I bet you it changed what you did the very next day as well.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
You just
Every
have a
day.
different lens in the way you're looking at it and how much you know
Absolutely.
it's going to be appreciated
Hmm.
Yep.
and wanting to have somebody experience that wonder when they
Yeah.
Yeah.
walk into their space and knowing that they will.
Well, and it's no pressure now that it's under construction. We got to make sure they get this thing that it's exactly that experience for them, right?
No
We can't
pressure at
screw
all.
this up now.
I'm gonna be
Yeah.
checking on you. So, what's been your favorite thing about working on this project?
I think it's what we just talked about. It's the people. It's
100%.
the overall experience of creating something that's meaningful and it's making an impact to the communities um, for long haul, right? This is not just a
Hmm.
glitzy once bright shining pretty things. It's impacting their lives, their economy, their culture for a generation to come. What else more could I ask in a project? Possibly.
Ditto.
It's the end of the day. It's always about the people, right?
Yeah.
It is absolutely, and
We
we
just
forget that a lot of times. I forget that a lot of times too.
it's not
But
the building is nothing without the people who are in it
exactly.
and how they experience. The first building that ever made me cry was St. Peter's
Mm,
That's a good
in
building.
Vatican City.
It's
Yeah,
pretty
I
cool.
walked,
yeah.
and I'm not religious at all.
Yeah.
Don't tell anybody in case that bothers anybody. But but the beauty and the art and the just massiveness of walking into this space where people
Yeah.
are very invested, their hearts are very invested, was just an incredibly moving experience. And that was the first
Yeah.
time I'd ever been overseas.
I love
Um,
that.
Yeah.
It's a
And
pretty cool one.
yeah, didn't take much to make me cry though. So before we get to our two closing questions, tell me what else. This is your chance to rah your firm a little bit.
What we're doing.
Tell me what else Mancini Duffy Phoenix. I talked to your compatriots in New York,
Yeah.
but tell me what else Mancini Duffy Phoenix is working on that I get to call you about later and say, okay, come back and tell me about this one.
Oh, I can't wait for that. So you know our firm. We're a 100+ years old firm, which is very shocking when most of the people hear that news. But Phoenix office, we're a baby. We're a year old. Ben and I opened this office about a year ago. I think one of the things here in Phoenix, what we're really trying to embody is our emphasis on collaboration and meaningful collaboration. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of buzz out there with technology. Technology is a tool. It's an enabler for the collaboration. It's not a product. It's not a thing. It's not just, it doesn't stand by itself. It's meaningful. It's meaningless. So we're really trying to embrace bringing the technology and creating a collaborative environment at our home here in our studio. We have our own tool called Tool Belt. We utilize every type of technology out there, really embracing it.
Mm-hmm.
We hear a lot about AI, but um, we want that to become a tool for us to bring people together. We invite our clients, our extended partners to come into our design lab, which is in current construction right now, hoping to be unveiled in the near future, where people can purely come in here with the immersive experience and changing the way that we experience and the design journey. We want everybody to come in with their passion, opinions, ideas, and able to embrace those collaboration with us in our studios. So we're really excited for that. And like I said, it's in literally middle of construction. So we're
Yeah.
really looking forward to have that design lab in our house here.
Yeah. And as far as projects we're working on, Cherise, we, as Hannah said, started this journey a year ago. We were able to kind of grow a little quickly, just kind of having projects like the Hualapai projects. In addition to that, we've had a great time kind of working on a good variety of projects. Almost nothing has been repeated as far as different types of markets. We're taking on a lot of things. I think I could see another native project being something you'd be interested in. We are currently, we've had a long relationship with a developer that is another native owner of land near actually where this project is, but near Page, Arizona, near the Horseshoe Bend Monument at the Grand Canyon. And his family owns a lot of the land that's adjacent to Horseshoe Bend. And he is a entrepreneur that has had a vision and has been working for a very long time. I've been working with him for 6 years at this point to develop a series of projects along the Grand Canyon that include a resort, a commercial mixed-use development, and then one of the ones that's been out in the press a little bit is the cultural center, which would be focused on telling the story of the Navajo, or the Dene is what they refer to themselves as, their people. And this
Mhm.
cultural center will be unlike anything I've ever worked on in my entire career. It's going to be something that is about a lot of the things we talked about today, actually, right? Telling not only their story, their history, their culture, but in kind of their heritage and really exposing to, as the way he puts it, the good and the bad, telling all the stories that are there, but it'll be interactive using technology to tell, for example, the creation story in an interactive way, being exposed to the way that they grow and make food every day, performances, artifacts, and then more importantly, focusing on educating not only people that would come visit that area, but even in their own community, keeping their language alive and doing genealogical research and keeping the Dene people alive. So that's something that we've been working on for quite some time, and we're hoping to get really fully going here very shortly. So that's a significant one, as well as some office work that we've been working on, some higher education, other hospitality projects. So we have a lot going on. We're really excited.
Well, just know that you do not need to wait for an invite. And basically, what I'm looking for is a project with a good story, regardless of what my episode that came out, or that I came out Friday, but I posted it today. It's a Dove Lake viewing shelter in Tasmania.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
But it's in these mountains, and it's
Yeah.
this concrete. It's the coolest thing ever. You talk about minimalist, but it's
I love it.
just a really cool thing up in the mountains to, have
Beautiful.
a place where people hike and to have this crazy view. So
Sounds
no, you don't have to
amazing.
wait for me to call you. You can call
Okay.
me and say, Cherise got this great project. You want to chat? And I will be totally game. You already have a free pass.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I
We're
always
doing this
close.
great law firm renovation right now.
Well, I hate to tell you this, Ben, or I don't hate to tell you this. You have like the perfect radio voice. I don't know if anybody's ever told you
I
that.
have
but
heard that before. Yes.
This whole interview, I'm like, maybe he should
now,
be hosting this
you're
podcast.
purposely making your voice lower now. Okay,
Actually,
come
I
on
did.
now, Ben.
Do you want me to go really low, Hannah?
Oh, God.
I told you she'll give me crap.
Those could be for evening interviews.
Yes. Hello.
that low. Okay.
Oh boy.
Oh, thank God I have editors. So
If you have any of those I could spare with my life, Cherise, I'd love to take advantage of that.
Oh God.
yeah, wouldn't we all?
I know.
I could go back some years. So I always close with 2 closing questions. The first being a broader industry question. And it changes with every guest, or whether I was in a hurry or not when I was writing the script. And so the question I have for the 2 of you today is, if you had to pick one thing that you feel, it doesn't have to fall into some perfect chart somewhere, but that you feel is the most pressing issue for
Yes.
architecture today, what would be at the top of your list?
You want me to go? You
Go
want me to
first. Go ahead.
You want
She's
me to
ready.
go?
You go, Hannah.
Go, Hannah.
I think our industry has become incredibly siloed in everything we do. Everybody's only focusing on architecture is, people in architecture and designs focusing on their buckets, and the MEPs focusing on their buckets, and, civil and structure. We use collaboration like it's a buzzword, but the true level of collaboration has subsided substantially. Whether that is people trying to protect themselves from any of the liability. I think if I was in client perspective, who is holding my hand? Who's making sure that this project is running smoothly? And sure, of course, there's a wonderful project management firms out there, but why is it only rely depending on them, right? Shouldn't that be the entire project team? You're on a project together with a common goal. Again, understanding why we're doing this. Why are we only focusing on protecting our asset? So I would really challenge our industry to think about, again, the reason behind why we're in this industry altogether. We're a service industry. There's a client. Client has a problem. We're there to create a problem, solve it. Let's get our mindsets together. Let's come together and truly brainstorm and come up with a creative solution that fits the client's need, not about ourselves. It's about the client's needs.
I would say to add to that,
Preaching to the
anticipating.
There was a
choir.
PC version of it,
No,
actually.
I would say anticipating even, right, Hannah?
Yeah.
For me, it's funny. I think that's one of the reasons that we are on this adventure. Cherise with Hannah and I, the CYA mentality is something that's a big trigger. But for me, to answer that question, I think there's so many things that you can talk, because you can talk about it, sustainability and resiliency is a big issue. We could talk about practical stuff, the budgets, the cost of building, and the uncertainty that we have right now in the markets, or even how politics, like you said earlier, is impacting it. But for me right now, what's keeping me up at night, I immediately thought of 2 words: talent and risk. Talent is one that's tough because we're in a unique spot where, when I came out of school, as an example, I'd say easily 75% of the people that I graduated with are no longer in architecture. We had the 08 recession that just wiped us out. We're missing a whole generation, and it impacts us. Hannah and I, it impacts the way that we hire. It impacts the way that we approach projects now, because we're missing a huge portion of, knowledge right now. And that leads to the risk for me. And there's really 2 pieces of that, by the way, and I won't get into it too much, but the one side of that is architects, we're terrible at risk. We don't understand it. We don't do well with it. Yep.
I'm sorry. I teach about risk. You are not telling me anything.
No, we don't do it well. And I think that is why we're being invaded from other parts of this industry, because it's so much easier for them, for a GC to come into our world. You said 2 of your good friends used to be architects and they work for GCs. I can't tell you how many GCs are stealing the good architects here. It's happening left and right. So it's because they get it better. They can pay better. They understand it. So that's one side of risk. The other side of it is we're taking on more, and we're relying on younger talent to deliver the same work, but they want it faster and cheaper. because
Uh-huh.
again, we're missing a generation, and we're getting closer, and it's happening more and more every day, where we have lost knowledge as it's retired out. And so those are the two things for me that I think there are major pressing issues. And I think there's bigger global issues like this, the resiliency. But
Mm-hmm.
honestly, we spend a lot of sleepless nights worrying about how we're going to get through the day by day and how we're going to plan accordingly to deliver the work to the level that we want to right now because of
Mm-hmm.
talent and risk.
It's funny that that's what keeps you up at night. I actually do a presentation about it and have presented it at, I'm at the older end of Gen X, and my firm of 22 years closed. I didn't just lose my job. The firm closed in the 08 recession.
Mm-hmm.
And Gen X is already half the size of the boomers already. And
Mhm.
that 08 recession wiped a whole bunch of us in this industry out that never came back. In the
Mm-hmm.
Portland area, they went to work for Intel or Nike or other big
Wherever.
industry. Yeah, and did not
Photography,
come back
real
because it was
estate.
so long.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
that was
now
a bad one.
Right. Now the boomers are leaving. They didn't really do a good job of sharing their knowledge in a lot of cases.
Yes.
And those of us in that kind of Gen X age range are expected to be the leaders, but we're already half the size of them.
Yep.
So who's
Yeah.
filling the other half of their shoes? But then we lost even more.
Exactly.
Well,
with
then
that
add to
recession.
that too, right? The whole thing, and I actually have a much more optimistic view of this than some people I talk to, but the AI revolution, right? Technology, the way it's changing and adapting the way we do it. I think as designers, we're actually in a very good spot. We could talk about that another time. I think there's other parts of our industry. I love structural engineers, but they're hosed, for example, right? So, I think that add to that too, to your point, right? There's a lot of stuff that's happening, and those talent right there, how do we deliver what we want to deliver with who we have? That's a huge issue.
I don't know about you, but even as a spec writer, I spend as much time in my day-to-day job mentoring the massive amount of young professionals we have in our company as I do actually writing my specs. And helping them know the right questions to ask. And you can't do that, or you can do this. And wait, you'll violate the contract.
Yeah.
I mean, because we have two ginormous generations behind me, both bigger than the boomers individually. And so that's why every firm I see right now is maybe 5 or less boomers. Maybe 10 Gen Xers and 489 millennials and Gen Zs. There's not enough of us to go around to be that mentor and guide and be leaders.
Exactly.
And I think it's keeping a lot of us up at night, which is why I teach, because that's all I can see. Like I have class tonight and I'll be teaching tonight, is the faster I can help them get some of this knowledge.
Yeah.
Good on you.
The better, because they have
hard.
to step up 10 to 15 years sooner. That's what we're asking them to do right now than any of us historically ever would have.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's not easy. So I commiserate
Yeah.
in a big way. Okay, easiest question of the day. That was sarcasm, just so you know that.
Oh, okay. I was going to be like, oh.
Final, I had to change this because I offended somebody with my original question, because I called it my total world domination question.
Oh.
But
I like that.
I've toned it. I love it too, but just in case somebody's going to be offended, I toned it down. So the question, and every guest gets this question, so no escaping. I hope that we all look to live a life that leaves some kind of contribution to make this world a better place.
Mm-hmm.
I know that at the end of the day, for me, that's what's more important than anything else I do. Personal or professional, what do you hope your impact will be?
You want me to start, Hannah, this time?
Sure.
Well, I not to go in too long, and I think we've talked a lot about this kind of stuff, but we started this office a year ago, Hannah and I. We had some vision of what we wanted to do that was maybe a little bit different than what we've done in the past. So from a professional perspective, I think we saw this, it comes down to a few things, and we talked about service, right? We're a service industry. And so we wanted that from an impact, we wanted to we recognize that if we're not servicing the way that clients are expecting, or maybe even not expecting sometimes, like, delivering a little bit above and beyond, they're going to go elsewhere. So service was one. To this idea of ego was a big one for us. We came into this saying that we don't want to be that anymore. We unfortunately have this habit of being the biggest head in the room sometimes as architects, and I think that's got to be checked at the door. And then this idea of embracing the future, right? And that means a lot of things. I think this idea of technology, one of the reasons why we both loved Mancini and came here was Christian Giordano, the president, embraces that, right? Let's be at the forefront of change and lead that. And so that was something from a professional standpoint. We saw those opportunities here, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to do that in Phoenix, right? And so those are things for me from an impact. We wanted to be able to kind of, I'm going to go right back to your original question, Cherise, like total domination. Hannah and I see this as an opportunity because we're really the only office in this entire region of the United States. And we see ourselves, and we joke around about it, like domination. Like we talk about
Global domination.
We're working in Denver, we're working in Salt Lake, we're working in Boise, we're working in California and Texas, and we have that domination. So that's from a professional impact. The personal impact I thought of was, and Hannah will laugh at me but this is an impactful thing for me. We invited Christian and Bill, who you know and have met, to come here. And we were going around and we were introducing them to potential clients and contractors that we work with and other things, and going around. And I remember at the end, Christian was talking to me and he says, you know what? He's like, I've got to change the way I think about the way that we approach clients. He's like, I have never seen more clients hug someone than they've hugged you. And he's like, and so for me, it goes right back to the relationships. I could give a crap about the projects. At the end of the day, if my impact has not been that I've had a personal impact on people, then what's the point?
I think we're kindred spirits. How about you, Hannah?
I don't know how to follow that. Sheesh. Professional or personal, I always said I want people to remember me as somebody who challenged them to see things slightly differently than what they're used to. We're in service industry, but we forget the journey to get to the final outcome. For a lot of our clients, sometimes this is the first time them working on a project and being part of the team. Our teammate, it could be sometimes first experiences ever. Same thing with our consultants as well. But I think if we focus on that journey together, for us to uplift each other, learn something from each other, challenge the ways, and that becomes memorable outcome experience for entire project team. And that will be something that you always, that'll reside with you. If people can remember to do that on every single project, and hopefully there's some component of that I contributed for them to think differently and have that memorable experience, then, my job is done. Domination.
Domination.
Right?
Total world. It's a hashtag total world domination.
Absolutely.
By being the nicest people ever.
Exactly. You know what? That is the secret sauce, though.
Yeah.
It really is. People have forgotten how to just be kind or just be empathetic or just to stop and listen more than you talk.
I agree.
I want you both to know there's no ego here.
Oh, thank you.
You both have been the most delightful guests I've had in a while. Like, this has been so much fun. My producer's going to kill me when he sees how long we went.
Blame it on me. That's what my wife
meat.
does. No, my wife blames me for everything. So just get in that line.
Oh, okay. I'm fine doing that.
It's Ben's fault.
Yep. Hannah does it too.
It's always Ben's fault.
Truly, thank you. I couldn't be more pleased to have been able to meet you both today and have this conversation. I am so grateful you both agreed to join my crazy. and I hope that you'll come back.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear what. And if I end up in the neighborhood, I'm coming to say hi.
Please do.
Please do.
I
Absolutely.
don't
We'd love to have you.
currently have Peach Springs on my travel plans, but
Or just come to
Yeah,
Scottsdale. Come and visit our office. That's okay.
I would, if I was in Scottsdale, I totally would.
There's a
Please
lot more
do.
to do in Scottsdale than Peach Springs.
Yes.
That's a good thing. That's a good
So.
thing to know. At least I know I could eat and get gas. And
You'll
sleep
get good food here.
in Peach Springs. Seriously, thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Really appreciate it.
I would stop recording if I could get my mouse on the right screen.